Have you ever wondered why so many people suddenly lose interest in intimacy, struggle with low desire, or feel like their sexual performance just isn't what it used to be, even when nothing seems obviously wrong? Here's something surprising that most people never hear from their doctor. In many cases, the problem has very little to do with love, attraction, or emotions. Sometimes the real cause is happening quietly inside the body itself. Poor sleep, chronic stress, hormonal imbalance, poor circulation, even hidden metabolic problems can slowly interfere with your sexual health without you realizing it. And the most important part, many people spend years looking for quick fixes while completely ignoring the root causes that are quietly stealing their energy, desire, and confidence. In today's video, we're going to uncover the science behind sexual health, explore what actually affects desire and performance in both men and women, and look at the foods, habits, supplements, and lifestyle changes that may genuinely help improve intimacy in a realistic, medically grounded way. Now, anytime we talk about sexual desire, one word almost always enters the conversation: aphrodisiacs. You've probably heard the term countless times before. Certain foods, herbs, drinks, or supplements are often advertised as magical solutions capable of transforming intimacy overnight. But what exactly is an aphrodisiac? Scientifically speaking, an aphrodisiac is considered any substance capable of increasing sexual desire, libido, performance, or pleasure during intimacy. And naturally, there are many reasons why someone might be interested in improving these aspects of their life. After all, intimacy is deeply connected not only to relationships, but also to emotional well-being, confidence, stress levels, hormonal health, and even overall quality of life. But before we get carried away by promises and internet myths, there's something incredibly important you need to understand. Despite centuries of stories about miracle foods and secret remedies, modern science still doesn't offer strong evidence that aphrodisiac foods directly and dramatically boost sexual performance in the magical way many people imagine. And the key word here is directly. Because while evidence for instant aphrodisiac effects may be limited, there is growing scientific support showing that many foods, nutrients, and lifestyle habits can indirectly improve sexual function by addressing real biological problems. They may improve blood flow, support hormone balance, reduce inflammation, help regulate mood, improve sleep quality, and even support testosterone and estrogen balance. In other words, they may not work like a switch that instantly turns desire on, but they can help restore the biological conditions your body needs for healthy intimacy to naturally happen. And when we talk about sexual desire in both men and women, there's one hormone that deserves special attention: testosterone. Most people mistakenly believe testosterone only matters for men, but that's simply not true. Both women and men rely on healthy testosterone levels to maintain sexual desire, energy, motivation, and overall well-being. When hormone balance starts to shift, intimacy is often one of the first things affected. Low desire, erectile difficulties, vaginal dryness, reduced pleasure, lower energy, and changes in emotional connection can all begin to appear. But before we even talk about boosting hormones or using supplements, we have to discuss something far more important. We have to understand the obstacles quietly interfering with sexual health every single day, because this is where most people make a major mistake. They search for pills, herbs, or miracle foods while completely ignoring the everyday habits damaging their sexual well-being in the first place. Imagine trying to fill a bucket while there's a giant hole at the bottom. That's exactly what happens when someone focuses only on quick fixes without addressing the underlying problems. And the very first obstacle on that list may surprise you: poor sleep. If you struggle with insomnia, restless sleep, or poor sleep quality, it doesn't matter how healthy your diet is, what supplements you take, or how physically fit you are, your sexual desire will almost always suffer. Sleep is not optional when it comes to hormone balance and intimacy. During sleep, your body regulates countless systems that directly affect libido, emotional stability, mood, and hormone production. When sleep becomes disrupted, those systems begin to lose balance. In fact, research involving postmenopausal women has shown something very interesting. Women suffering from insomnia often experience significantly higher rates of sexual health problems, including low desire, vaginal dryness, discomfort during intimacy, and reduced overall satisfaction compared to women who sleep well. But this issue isn't limited to women, and it certainly isn't limited by age. To understand why sleep matters so much, we need to briefly talk about something called the circadian rhythm, the body's internal day and night clock. This biological system regulates far more than simply when you feel sleepy. It helps coordinate hormone production, mental health, emotional balance, metabolism, mood, energy, and even sexual desire. When insomnia disrupts this internal rhythm, the consequences ripple throughout the body in ways many people never connect to intimacy. Think about how different you feel after several nights of poor sleep. You're exhausted, mentally foggy, emotionally irritable, less motivated, and often disconnected from pleasure in general. Now imagine those effects quietly building over weeks or months. It becomes much easier to understand why desire starts to fade. Sexual health is deeply connected to energy, emotional well-being, hormone balance, and brain function. When sleep suffers, intimacy often suffers right alongside it. And this brings us to an important lesson that applies to nearly everyone. Before worrying about aphrodisiac foods, supplements, or performance enhancers, one of the smartest things you can do for your sexual health is repair your sleep. Sometimes fixing the foundation creates bigger changes than chasing complicated solutions. But poor sleep isn't the only hidden enemy quietly affecting intimacy. There's another obstacle that modern life practically forces into our daily routine, and it may be even more powerful than insomnia itself. It's something many people experience every single day without realizing how deeply it affects their hormones, desire, and even physical performance in the bedroom. And once you understand what it does inside the brain, many struggles with intimacy suddenly start making a lot more sense. That hidden obstacle is chronic stress. And if there's one factor quietly destroying sexual health in modern life, this may be one of the biggest. Most people think of stress as simply feeling overwhelmed or mentally exhausted. But inside the body, stress is far more powerful than that. It changes how your brain functions, how your hormones behave, how blood circulates through your body, and even how receptive you are to intimacy in the first place. In many cases, the problem isn't that someone no longer wants connection. The problem is that their nervous system has been stuck in survival mode for so long that desire simply gets pushed aside. To understand this, we need to talk about something fascinating happening in your nervous system every second of the day. Your body has what's called the autonomic nervous system, the part of your brain and body that controls countless functions automatically without you consciously thinking about them. And this system has two major modes that operate almost like opposites. The first is known as the sympathetic nervous system. Think of this as your body's emergency mode, your fight or flight system. This is the state your body enters when you're dealing with pressure, deadlines, anxiety, conflict, danger, or overwhelming mental stress. When this system activates, your body starts prioritizing survival above everything else. Blood flow gets redirected toward the muscles to help you run, fight, or react quickly. Stress hormones rise. Your brain becomes hyper-focused on problem solving and protection. Even pain can temporarily feel reduced because your body is trying to keep you functioning under pressure. But here's the problem. Sexual desire does not thrive in survival mode. Intimacy relies heavily on the opposite system, the parasympathetic nervous system. This is often called the rest and digest state, the mode your body enters when you feel safe, calm, relaxed, emotionally connected, and physically comfortable. This is the state associated with digestion, healing, recovery, hormonal regulation, and importantly, sexual function. Your body literally becomes more biologically prepared for intimacy when it feels relaxed rather than threatened. And suddenly, something most people experience begins to make sense. Why does intimacy often feel easier during a quiet weekend afternoon when you're rested and relaxed compared to after a stressful 12-hour workday? Why do some people feel emotionally disconnected from intimacy after difficult weeks, even in healthy relationships? Why can exhaustion or anxiety make desire seem to disappear almost overnight? The answer often has very little to do with attraction and much more to do with nervous system activity. Your brain simply cannot prioritize pleasure while it believes survival deserves more attention. This explains something many couples misunderstand. Sometimes a decline in desire isn't rejection, emotional distance, or lack of love. Sometimes it's biology asking for recovery. A nervous system overwhelmed by stress naturally deprioritizes intimacy because, from an evolutionary perspective, reproduction and pleasure are secondary to immediate survival. That's why no supplement, no miracle food, and no internet trick can magically overpower severe chronic stress. If someone is constantly overwhelmed, emotionally exhausted, sleeping poorly, mentally overstimulated, and physically drained, even the most promising nutritional strategies will likely produce disappointing results. It's like trying to improve athletic performance without allowing the body to rest. Now, this doesn't mean stress automatically destroys intimacy forever. What it does mean is that reducing its impact becomes one of the most powerful ways to restore sexual well-being. Sometimes the answer isn't adding more supplements, but removing some of the biological obstacles standing in the way. And while stress and sleep are two major pillars, there's another everyday factor quietly shaping hormone levels, blood flow, energy, and sexual function in ways many people never fully appreciate. Food. Because just as certain nutrients may support hormone balance and circulation, other eating habits can slowly move the body in the opposite direction. And honestly, this part shouldn't surprise anyone. Diets high in refined sugars, ultra-processed carbohydrates, unhealthy fats, and heavily processed foods tend to have some of the most damaging effects on overall health, including sexual well-being. Over time, these foods can reduce energy levels, disrupt hormone balance, increase inflammation, negatively affect circulation, and even interfere with the body's ability to regulate insulin properly. One of the clearest examples of this connection becomes visible in men dealing with erectile dysfunction. Many people assume erectile dysfunction begins and ends with aging, but in reality, one of the earliest warning signs doctors often look for is something called insulin resistance. This is a metabolic condition where the body stops responding effectively to insulin, leading to elevated insulin levels and major disruptions in blood sugar control. And here's why this matters. Insulin resistance often damages blood vessels over time. Remember this because it's incredibly important. Healthy sexual function relies heavily on healthy circulation. For an erection to happen, blood vessels need to relax and deliver enough blood flow to genital tissue. When blood vessels become stiff, inflamed, or damaged, this process becomes far more difficult. Elevated insulin, cholesterol imbalances, inflammation, and metabolic dysfunction can all quietly impair circulation long before someone experiences more obvious health problems. In many cases, erectile dysfunction isn't just a sexual issue. It may be one of the body's earliest warning signs that cardiovascular or metabolic health needs attention. And women are not excluded from this conversation either. Healthy circulation matters for female sexual function too. Blood flow supports arousal, lubrication, tissue sensitivity, and comfort during intimacy. Poor circulation and hormonal imbalance can contribute to vaginal dryness, reduced sensitivity, and decreased desire over time. So when we look at sexual health through a medical lens, something fascinating becomes clear. It isn't isolated from the rest of the body. Sexual well-being reflects what's happening internally. Sleep quality, stress levels, circulation, hormones, metabolic health, mood, nutrition, and nervous system balance all contribute to the picture. And this brings us to one of the most important hormones governing sexual desire in both men and women, a hormone surrounded by myths, confusion, and endless internet misinformation. Because once these obstacles begin to improve, There's one biological factor that often plays a major role in restoring libido, performance, confidence, and energy. We need to talk about testosterone, what it actually does, why it matters far more than most people realize, and the surprising foods and natural compounds that may help support it in realistic ways. Now that we've uncovered some of the biggest obstacles interfering with intimacy, poor sleep, chronic stress, and metabolic health, we can finally talk about one of the most important biological players in sexual well-being, testosterone. And before you immediately think, that's only relevant for men, let's clear up one of the biggest misconceptions in health. Testosterone matters in both women and men. Yes, men naturally produce higher amounts, but women also rely on healthy testosterone levels for sexual desire, energy, motivation, mood, confidence, and overall vitality. When testosterone falls out of balance, sexual health is often one of the first areas where people notice something feels different. For women, low testosterone may contribute to reduced sexual desire, lower energy, emotional flatness, and less satisfaction during intimacy. For men, hormonal imbalance may contribute to erectile difficulties, reduced libido, lower stamina, and in some cases even premature ejaculation. But here's the key point many people miss. Hormones rarely operate in isolation. They're heavily influenced by sleep, nutrition, stress, inflammation, exercise, and overall metabolic health. This is why no supplement can fully replace a healthy biological foundation. Still, once those obstacles are being addressed, there are certain foods and nutrients that may genuinely support sexual well-being in meaningful ways. And naturally, this brings us back to aphrodisiacs. For thousands of years, humans have searched for foods, herbs, and remedies believed to improve fertility, desire, and intimacy. In fact, ancient civilizations documented these practices long before modern medicine even existed. Historical records from ancient Egypt mention unusual fertility remedies, including the use of animal-based foods, to supposedly improve male sexual performance. Even the word aphrodisiac itself comes from Aphrodite, the Greek goddess associated with love, beauty, and desire, which means people have been fascinated by sexual enhancement for well over 2,000 years. But something interesting happens when we separate myth from science. Not all aphrodisiacs work the same way, and some may not work in the way people expect at all. There's actually a fascinating psychological phenomenon called the placebo effect, and it can play a surprisingly powerful role in intimacy. Simply believing that you're consuming something capable of improving desire or performance may increase confidence, reduce anxiety, and positively affect expectations. And when it comes to sexual health, confidence itself can be incredibly important. But beyond psychology, there are foods that may support the biological systems involved in sexual function. Let's begin with one of the most famous examples, oysters. For centuries, oysters have been considered one of the ultimate aphrodisiac foods across different cultures. But the real scientific explanation may be less mysterious and much more practical. Oysters are among the richest dietary sources of zinc, a mineral that plays an essential role in testosterone production. When the body lacks zinc, testosterone levels may decline significantly, potentially affecting libido, energy, fertility, and sexual performance. This doesn't mean oysters instantly transform someone's sex life overnight, but correcting nutritional deficiencies can help restore normal biological function, and that matters far more than flashy promises. Then we have pistachios and foods rich in arginine, and this is where circulation becomes incredibly important again. Arginine is an amino acid your body uses to produce nitric oxide, and nitric oxide plays a major role in relaxing blood vessels. Think of it like this. When blood vessels relax and widen, circulation improves. More blood can reach tissues more effectively. And when we're discussing sexual health, blood flow matters enormously. Healthy circulation supports erectile function in men, but it's also important for female arousal, tissue sensitivity, and sexual comfort. Better circulation supports the natural physical processes involved in intimacy. Now, here's something important to clarify because people often confuse the terms. Nitric oxide is not the same thing as nitrous oxide, the gas you may have seen in movies or associated with racing cars. Nitric oxide is naturally produced by your body and acts as a vasodilator, meaning it helps blood vessels relax and widen. That improved circulation doesn't only affect muscles during exercise, it also supports many tissues throughout the body, including genital tissues. Pistachios also contain selenium, another important nutrient involved in hormone production and reproductive health. Together, these nutrients may support healthy testosterone levels and contribute indirectly to sexual well-being. But the list doesn't stop there. Another fascinating example is saffron, a spice long considered an aphrodisiac in traditional medicine. What makes saffron especially interesting is that researchers have also explored its role in mood support and emotional well-being. Since emotional health and sexual desire are deeply connected, anything that improves mood may indirectly support intimacy as well. Then we have beets, which work through a mechanism similar to arginine-rich foods. Beets may help increase nitric oxide production, supporting blood vessel function and circulation. And again, this matters for both women and men because healthy blood flow contributes to physical arousal, sensitivity, and sexual function in both sexes. Asparagus is another food frequently mentioned for its potential benefits, not only for overall health, but also because it provides nutrients involved in energy production, circulation, and hormone support. And surprisingly, there are several other everyday foods associated with sexual well-being, including celery, garlic, salmon, and other fatty fish rich in omega-3 fatty acids. But one of the most unexpected findings comes from research involving something incredibly simple: apples. In a study published several years ago, women who regularly consumed an apple each day reported better sexual function and higher levels of desire compared to women who did not eat apples consistently. Now, before anyone rushes to call apples a miracle cure, it's important to stay realistic. One study doesn't prove cause and effect, but findings like this remind us that everyday dietary habits may influence health in ways we're still learning to understand. And then there are two incredibly simple ingredients many people already have sitting in their kitchen right now, ingredients that may offer subtle hormonal support without requiring expensive supplements. One is clove, which can easily be added to tea or coffee. The other is cinnamon, a spice associated in some research in traditional medicine with hormonal balance and reproductive health. Some evidence suggests cinnamon may support circulation and metabolic function, both of which indirectly influence sexual well-being. When you step back and look at the bigger picture, something important becomes obvious. Foods that improve circulation, support nitric oxide production, help balance hormones, reduce inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, and lower stress tend to support sexual health far more effectively than trendy miracle cures. But what happens when food alone isn't enough? What if someone has already improved sleep, reduced stress, cleaned up their nutrition, and still feels like something is missing? This is where supplements and medicinal herbs enter the conversation, and some of them have surprisingly interesting research behind them, especially when it comes to libido, fertility, testosterone support, and sexual performance. So, what happens when healthy habits, better sleep, reduced stress, and improved nutrition still don't seem to move the needle enough? This is where many people began exploring supplements and medicinal herbs. And while the wellness industry often makes exaggerated promises, the truth is that a handful of nutrients and plant compounds have shown interesting potential for supporting sexual health, especially when deficiencies, hormonal imbalance, or chronic stress are part of the picture. But before we dive in, there's something extremely important to remember. Supplements are not magic. They work best when they're supporting a healthy foundation, not replacing one. If someone is sleeping poorly, overwhelmed by stress, eating a highly processed diet, and struggling with metabolic issues, even the best supplement may offer disappointing results. Think of them as tools, not shortcuts. Let's start with two of the most important nutritional factors connected to hormonal health: vitamin D and zinc. Deficiencies in these nutrients are surprisingly common, and when levels are low, hormone balance can suffer. Research involving men with very low testosterone levels, a condition sometimes called hypogonadism, has shown that correcting deficiencies in vitamin D and zinc may help support healthier testosterone production. This doesn't mean everyone should immediately start taking large doses, but it highlights something important. Sometimes what feels like a mysterious loss of desire or a low energy may partially reflect nutritional deficiencies hiding in plain sight. And this idea matters for both women and men. Sexual health is deeply connected to overall health. When the body lacks key nutrients, hormonal systems often struggle to function optimally. Now let's move into medicinal herbs, because this is where things become especially interesting. One of the most studied herbs for libido and hormone support is fenugreek. Several studies have suggested that fenugreek extract may help support testosterone-related pathways, potentially contributing to improved libido, body composition, and sexual performance in some individuals. Some participants in studies reported better desire and improved intimacy after supplementation. But there's an important detail many people overlook. The research was largely performed using concentrated extracts, not simply the culinary spice itself sprinkled into food. In other words, dosage and preparation matter. Then we come to Tribulus terrestris, a plant that has become extremely popular, particularly among men seeking better libido or sexual performance. Interestingly, Tribulus appears to work differently than many people assume. Despite common internet claims, research does not strongly support the idea that it dramatically raises testosterone directly. Instead, its potential benefits seem more related to supporting libido and erectile function through other biological pathways. Some studies have shown improvements in sexual desire and performance when used consistently, though results vary from person to person.